Okay, welcome back to this tutorial. Here I'll be teaching you the CSS padding. Okay, now without wasting much time, let's go and see what the CSS padding is. Okay, what is CSS padding? CSS padding properties are used to create space around an element content inside of any defined border. Okay, so I think with this now we can say CSS padding is more like, or it's similar to CSS margin, because CSS padding is a property that are used to generate space around content. Okay, now the padding properties sets the size of the white space between the element content and the element border. All right, so now we have different types of and we also I think also the CSS padding properties defines white space. I've seen that already. Define the white space around defines the white space between the element content and the element border. Okay, now we have the individual sides of CSS padding, which is the padding top, the padding right, the padding bottom, and the padding left. Okay, so now without wasting much time again, let's go straight into our text editor. So we'll still use the file for CSS border, okay, for our padding. So we'll add the padding to all the p tag we already had. Okay, we add the padding to all the p tag we already had. Okay, and this is how it goes, right? So at first, you have all padding properties can have the following value. First, we have the length which specifies a padding in px, which is pixels, the pt, which is padding top, and the centimeter, which is cm, right? And it can be specified in percentage, all right, which is the percentage of the width of the containing element, all right? And it can also take the inherit, and that is it specifies the pad inherit, right? Inherit that specifies the padding. That specifies that the padding should be inherited from the parent element. Okay, now, and the reason, if you remember, the reason why all the margin here is working for the rest p tag with a class is because the parent element, which is the p here is the parent element. So I decide to start the parent element, and all the child also inherited from the parent element. Okay, so take for instance, I decide to style the body tag here. I decide to start the body tag here. All other p tag inside, all other elements inside the body tag will also inherit from what I have styled. Okay, so now also I'm still going to style the parent tag here, which is the p tag, using the CSS padding. Okay, now we have, like I said before, we have 4 individual sides, which is the top, the padding top, the padding bottom, the padding left, and the padding right. Okay, so now let's start with our coding. So we have padding top to be, let's say we have padding top to be 50 pixels. Okay, have padding right to be 30 pixels, right? Padding right to be 30 pixels. Okay, padding left, sorry, that should be padding bottom. Padding bottom should be 50 pixels, alright. Padding left now will now be 80 pixels. Okay, so let's see how this looks. Okay, so let's refresh. Now you see, this is exactly what it means. Now we are now having a padding between our border and the text. We're having a padding between the border and the text. This is what padding is used for. It is used to create space between the padding and the content of the content that is inside the border. Okay, it is used to create space between the border and the content. This is exactly what padding is used for. The CSS padding, this is what it is used for. Okay, so now having known this, now then we will see you in the next tutorial. So, well, just before we go, let me just tell you the brief a brief illustration of how it works. Now, if padding property has 4 value, okay, the padding to be let's say for example we have the padding has 4 value. So instead of me listing them out like this, let's say I just had padding, right, and I hit enter. So and I started by, let's say the first one is 50 pixels, right? It's create space, then I said 30 pixels, right? Create another space, then I say 50 pixels again, create another space, and I said 80 pixels. What this line of code, this single line of code is still the same thing as this 4 line of code. Okay, this single line of code is still the same thing as the 4 line of code, because this first one here represents the padding top, right? The second one here represents the padding right. The third one here represents the padding bottom, and the last one here represents the padding left. So they are still the same thing. You can either write it in one line just like this, or you split them out individually like the way I've done before. You can also do the same thing for margin. You can write your margin CSS styling in one line, or you split them out just the way I did on the screen. Okay, now you have if the padding property has 3 values. Okay, if the padding property has 3 values, that is the padding to be, let's say the 3 values, let's say we just have 50, 30 and 50, right? This implies that you only have the padding for the top, for the right, and for the bottom. Okay, if you only have 3 values, that means you have the padding stuff for the top, for the right, and for the bottom. And if you have just 2 value, if you have just 2 value, you only have the padding for the top and for the right. Okay, and if you have 1 value, you just have the all 4 paddings to be that value. Okay, if you have just 1 value, let's say you just have padding to be, let's create, just say 1 value, padding, let's say padding to just be 1 value. Let's say we use 50 pixels. That means all these 4 sides, all the individual sides of the padding will be 50. Okay, now having known all this, now we'll end this tutorial here, and we wait, and then we'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.